the burden and challenges experienced by young carers in neurology can be quite profound because of what we understand about neurological disorders. Very few treatments, if at all, are available. I spend a lot of my time in ALS and motor neuron disease, but I've also done a lot of research in Huntington's disease and Alzheimer's and related dementia. And what we do know about young carers in these populations is that they're doing the exact same things that adult caregivers are doing. And they're doing just as complex, just as intense, but they're trying to balance it with going to school, with trying to find peer relationships, with trying to find support. And so they're feeding, bathing, toileting, administering medication, transferring, and often in a much more isolated way because society does not recognize as a whole the role that children and youth play as caregivers, being young carers, and particularly in neurological disorders, which receive less attention, but are also often much more complex and involve not only care with, limbs, with respiratory, with communication, with incontinence. So the complexity of neurological disorders really does lead to, I would say, not necessarily a higher burden, but a much more intensity of care for our children and youth young carers. So the YCare program was created specifically for all of the reasons I just said above. So YCare is delivered by physical therapy, respiratory therapy, speech language pathology, social work, neurology, and respiratory and occupational therapy. I think I left them out in a multi-disciplinary way to where children who, again, have been so socially isolated and haven't had those resources come to a day and they move around throughout the day in different modules, and they learn directly from these individuals who are the experts in care. So they learn the best way to adapt or put on a gait belt, the best way to help someone transfer. What are some of the consistencies in foods and liquids that might lead to swallowing or choking if someone is having a difficulty doing that? So it gives them the opportunity to learn those hands-on skills from those experts. But we also do it in a peer-engaged environment to where they're meeting other young carers, which most of them have never met. So then they have that confidence in the skill. They're also learning that social support. And then at the end of the day, when they go back home to their parent or grandparent, then they can say, now I know what an OT does. Now I understand why you see a speech language pathologist or why a BiPAP is important for you, because so often children are providing care, but they haven't been given the skill or the actual direction in doing the kind of care that they're doing. And a lot of my research really borne that out. So that's why we created the YCare program, and we have administered it in all across the United States and around the world, including a completely readapted program for the South African context. Just the only thing I'd like to mention is, our foundation, the Global Neuro YCare Foundation, really working internationally to bring education, supports, and the YCare program to individuals, children, family around the world living in neurological disorders. So in addition to being a professor of social work, I do run that organization.